Welcome to the Facilitators Deep Dive Podcast, your podcast on your way to facilitation mastery.
Today, we're going to be diving into some really interesting stuff from Management 3.0.
Okay.
We're talking about delegation poker and delegation boards. Have you ever been in a situation at work where, decisions just seem to get stuck with the manager?
Yeah.
Or, nobody really knows who's responsible for what?
For sure.
So that's what these tools are all about. They help bring some clarity to delegation.
Yeah.
Make it a little more fun.
Right.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much smoother things can run when everyone just knows, what their role is and they feel like they have the power to make decisions.
Absolutely.
There's some really practical techniques that Management 3.0 really gets right.
Yeah, let's jump right into delegation poker. What is it? Why is it so good at untangling these kind of messy delegation knots?
Okay, so delegation poker is a game.
Okay.
And I mean, literally a game with cards that teams can use to figure out, the right level of authority for all these different situations that come up.
Yeah.
And the thing is, delegation isn't always, black and white.
Right.
It's not just like the manager decides or the team decides.
Yeah.
There's this whole spectrum in between. And the game helps to navigate that gray area.
I like that. So it's about finding that sweet spot where team members have, just the right amount of decision-making power.
Yeah, exactly.
But how does it actually work?
Okay, so imagine you have a team, let's say 5 people.
Okay.
Gathered around a table.
Uh-huh.
They have these cards that are numbered from 1 to 7. And each number represents a different level of delegation. So level 1 would be tell.
Okay.
Where the manager just makes the decision.
Uh-huh.
And then you go all the way up to level 7, which is delegate. And that's where the team has full autonomy.
Got it. So what are they actually doing with the cards, though?
Okay, so they're all discussing specific situations,
No.
like hypothetical ones or even real challenges that they're facing as a team.
Yeah.
And each member privately chooses a card. That shows how much authority they think the team should have in that particular situation. And then everyone flips their cards over at the same time.
Oh, I bet that leads to some interesting conversations.
Definitely.
Because not everyone is always going to pick the same number, right?
Right, exactly. And that's where all the good stuff happens. You might have one person who picks a 2, which would be sell, where the manager kind of explains their decision.
Okay.
But the team doesn't have a whole lot of input.
Uh-huh.
And then somebody else might pick a 5, which is advise, meaning that the team is actually making the final decision. And so having to explain those different perspectives really helps to get everyone on the same page.
So it's more than just a game. It's actually uncovering those hidden assumptions
Totally.
that we all have about decision making.
Yes. And what's really cool is it's not about finding the one right answer or making everyone agree. Just having the open discussion and understanding everyone's point of view is a huge win. You build trust and the team can move forward together.
Absolutely. So delegation poker helps teams to get clear on their style. But how does that then translate to the actual work?
Okay, so that's where the delegation board comes in.
Okay.
It's kind of like a visual roadmap. That brings those decisions to life. It can be anything like a whiteboard or a spreadsheet, even a dedicated window, whatever works for your team.
Okay.
And on this board, you just list out all the key decision areas that you discussed in the game and assign each one a level based on what the team agreed on.
I see. So it's kind of like an information radiator.
Exactly.
So everybody knows who's doing what.
Yeah, it's like a team dashboard
Okay.
for decision making.
Makes sense, but wouldn't it get kind of stale after a while?
That's a good question. It's not meant to be static.
Right.
It should be reviewed and updated as needed.
Okay.
So as the team, gains more experience, they might find that they're ready for more autonomy in some areas.
Yeah.
Or maybe they need to pull back a little in others. The key is to keep it flexible and aligned with the team's needs.
So it's a tool for continuous improvement.
Exactly.
Now, before we get too deep into how to use delegation boards, I want to hear about some real-world examples.
Okay.
Have you seen these tools actually making a difference?
Yeah, for sure. There are companies out there using this stuff with great results.
Okay.
So for example, order and offshoring.
Uh-huh.
They found that delegation poker really helped them to define responsibilities, which made communication so much better.
Yeah.
And it even made it easier to have tough conversations with managers.
Interesting. So it's not just about empowering the team, it's also about that open communication,
Yeah,
even across different levels.
exactly.
Any other examples come to mind?
Yeah, so there's another company called Biopark,
Okay.
and they're led by Alexander Vignato. And they've also seen some great results using this. But what really brings this stuff to life? are those specific stories
Yes.
of how it actually plays out. So there's this really cool story about Newarks,
Uh-huh.
and they used Delegation Poker for a really special occasion. They used it to plan Kumiko's anniversary.
Wait, they use a management tool to plan an anniversary party.
I know, right?
That's really cool. I got to hear more about this.
Yeah, so it's a perfect example of how adaptable this tool is. So instead of using those predefined work scenario, they brainstormed a ton of ideas to celebrate Kumiko.
Okay.
And then they used Delegation Poker to decide which ideas would be led by the manager, which ones would be collaborative, and which ones would be completely delegated to the team.
That's awesome.
It made the planning so much fun.
Yeah.
And everyone felt ownership.
That's really cool. So delegation poker isn't just for those serious business decisions then.
Right.
Yeah.
Used for all sorts of team activities.
Yeah. All right. So speaking of different scenarios,
Yeah.
how does this work for remote teams? You know, can you still play this game?
Totally. And use these visual tools when everyone's all over the place.
Absolutely.
Management 3.0 is perfect for remote and hybrid situations.
Yeah.
So for delegation poker, you could use virtual whiteboards
Okay.
like Miro or even Google Sheets. You could even find templates online that make it super easy.
Wow. So no matter where your team is, they can still use this collaborative approach.
Exactly.
All right. What about the delegation board? How do you make that work virtually?
You just need to find a shared digital space that everyone can access, like a spreadsheet
Okay.
or a page in your project management tool. Even a virtual whiteboard could work,
Right.
as long as it's visible
Yeah.
and easy to update.
Gotcha. So we've got the tools, both physical and virtual.
Yeah.
But how do we make sure that they actually work? Like, what's the secret sauce to using these successfully?
I don't know if there are any secrets, but one of the most important things is to hang the delegation board,
Okay.
whether it's physical or virtual, in a spot where everyone can see it. So it's a constant reminder.
Yeah, it's like out of sight, out of mind, right?
Right.
Keep it visible. Keep it top of mind.
You also want to review those delegation levels regularly
Okay.
and adjust them as needed. So like as the team grows and projects change, the levels might need to be tweaked. Maybe the team needs more autonomy, or maybe they need more collaboration with the manager.
So stay agile, basically.
Basic.
Adapt to the changing needs.
Yeah.
Any other tips before we move on?
Yeah, I think the best advice is to just use delegation poker as a starting point.
Okay.
So anytime you start a new project,
Yeah.
it helps to set the stage for a collaborative approach.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
So starting with that shared understanding will save you time and headaches down the road.
for sure.
Awesome. Now, I know there's a ton of resources out there for people who want to learn more about this stuff.
Yeah.
Can you point us in the right direction?
Absolutely. The Management 3.0 website is a goldmine.
Okay.
They have tons of articles and blog posts,
Uh-huh.
and they even have downloadable delegation poker cards
Really?
in multiple languages.
That's cool. So even if you don't have the physical deck, you can still experience the game.
Exactly. And if you like that tactile experience,
Yeah.
you can always buy a physical deck from their shop. But before you do that, we have a few more examples of these tools in action.
Okay. I'm ready.
So one that comes to mind is Coaching Expert Team.
Okay.
They use delegation poker to like navigate this really complex team environment where things were always changing.
Yeah. Makes sense.
You know, when roles and responsibilities are constantly in flux, it's even more important to know who's doing what.
For sure. Did they actually see results from using delegation poker?
Oh yeah, definitely. They noticed way fewer decision bottlenecks because before everything had to go through the manager
Okay.
and it just caused all these delays and frustration. But after they started using delegation poker, team members felt empowered to make decisions on their own. And things just moved a lot faster.
So it clarified roles and boosted their productivity.
Exactly.
That's awesome. What other stories can you share?
Okay, so there's a really interesting case study about how delegation poker was used in a finance innovation team.
Finance.
Huh.
I know, right?
Not exactly known for being the most playful,
Yeah, not really.
but they still saw the value in this.
Yeah, they realized that they could use a game to clarify their decision processes and actually spark some creative problem solving.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
It challenges the assumption that these tools are only for certain types of teams.
Yeah, for sure. It shows that any team can benefit from this.
Now, what about that Management 3.0 video we talked about earlier?
Right. What about delegation boards?
Yeah.
It shows how companies have used these boards in real life
Hmm.
to create transparency and empower their teams. And one of the key takeaways from that video is that it's not enough to just create the board.
Right. You got to keep it alive.
Exactly.
Keep it up to date.
Yeah.
So are there any other resources out there that you would recommend?
Okay, so there's this great LinkedIn article,
All right.
and it's called Delegation Poker, The Art of Delegating, Strengthening Trust Within Teams.
And it really goes deep into how this approach can build trust and psychological safety.
That's so important, especially with all these remote and hybrid teams these days.
Yeah, it's crucial.
Any other resources?
Well, the Management 3.0 website itself has a ton of stuff. Like there's an article called How to Multiply Autonomy and Empowerment in Your Team with Delegation Poker. And it gives you all these practical steps and tips.
Perfect for people who are ready to take action.
Exactly.
What about resources for people who want to teach this stuff to others?
Oh, yeah, there's a really helpful piece called Applying Delegation Poker to Mentor a New Scrum Master. And it shows you how to use the game as a training tool.
Oh, cool. So delegation poker isn't just for teams then.
Right.
It can be used for coaching and mentoring too.
Totally.
Now, we've talked a lot about delegation poker. Any resources specifically about delegation boards?
Yeah, definitely. So there's an article called How to Make the Delegation Board Work for Your Team. And it gives you a bunch of tips and examples.
Okay.
And then if you want a bigger picture view of self-organization,
Mm-hmm.
there's a piece called How to Get Your Team Started with Self-Organization. And it talks about how delegation boards can help to foster autonomy and empower teams.
Those sound really helpful. Any resources about keeping the board updated?
Yeah, there's a great article called Delegation Boards, the sequel, or why you should update.
Okay.
It talks about how important it is to review the board regularly and adjust it as needed.
So it's not a one and done kind of thing.
Right, it's an ongoing process.
Awesome. Now, where can people find all these resources?
You can find them all on the Management 3.0 website. It's the best place to go for all things Management 3.0. And they even have unofficial websites in Chinese and Japanese.
Really?
Yeah.
That's so cool. It shows how popular this stuff is becoming.
It really does.
It's inspiring to see these ideas spreading all over the world.
Yeah, it shows that people everywhere want to work in a more collaborative and empowering environment.
Now, before we wrap up this deep dive, do you have any final thoughts for our listeners?
As you start to experiment with these tools, just remember that delegation is more of an art than a science.
Okay.
It takes practice and feedback.
Yeah.
And you have to be willing to let go of control.
Yeah. Trust your team.
Exactly.
It's really interesting how we talk about delegation like it's just something to check off a to-do list. But it sounds like it's so much more than that.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's really a whole philosophy of leadership. That
Yeah.
can change how teams work together.
You got it. It's about building a culture of trust and empowerment
Yeah.
and shared responsibility.
So it's about recognizing that everybody has something valuable to contribute.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And creating an environment
Yeah.
where those contributions are valued.
Yeah, it's about moving away from that old command and control style and being more collaborative.
Right. And that's what Management 3.0 is all about, creating happier and more engaged teams that are ultimately more successful.
And it sounds like delegation poker and delegation boards are great tools for putting those principles into practice.
For sure.
Yeah.
They give teams a way to have those conversations about delegation. They make it fun and transparent, and they make it clear that delegation is a process.
Not just a one-time thing.
Exactly.
We're journeying.
A journey, not a destination.
And as we continue on this journey with Management 3.0, there are so many practices and games and tools to help make work more engaging and innovative.
And even happier.
Happier. Yeah, you don't always hear that word when talking about work.
I know, right?
But it's so important.
It really is.
Because when people are happy, they're more productive and creative and more likely to put in that extra effort.
It's not just about individual happiness, though. It's about creating a culture of happiness.
That spreads throughout the whole company.
Exactly. When people feel valued and respected and empowered, it creates a positive ripple effect.
So Management 3.0 is about making work more human.
That's it. It's about creating a workplace
Yeah.
where people can thrive.
All right, well, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive into delegation poker and delegation boards. But before we go, do you have any final words of wisdom?
As you start to use these tools, remember that delegation is an art, not a science.
Okay.
It takes practice and feedback and a willingness to let go of control.
And embrace collaboration.
Exactly.
Don't be afraid to have some fun with it, too.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
The more playful you can be, the more people will feel empowered and excited to contribute.
Well said.
And to our amazing listeners, thank you for joining us on this journey of discovery.
We hope you learned something new that you can use in your own work.
The journey of leadership and team empowerment never really ends.
That's true.
So embrace Management 3.0, experiment with these tools, and keep learning and growing.
Keep diving deep.
This is the Deep Dive signing off.
See you next time on the Facilitators Deep Dive Podcast, your podcast on your way to facilitation mastery. Until next time.
See you then.